Hey, it's Ryland James, and I'm hanging out with Rob on Front Row Live.
For starters, I fell in love with your voice the moment I clicked on Better Off. And, I want to talk about, kind of discovering your sound and kind of discovering your voice. How did you kind of go about that? Was there a lot of trial and error with trying different styles of music before you can figure out this is your sound, this is where you belong?
Totally, yeah. I mean, I grew up listening to music all the time. I came from a very soul gospel kind of background. My grandma, she played gospel piano growing up all the time. So I was always tinkering around with instruments, and I feel like that was kind of the root of where I kind of always wanted to go with music. But then I kind of got into this phase when my voice was changing, where I went into a jazz and then a classical and then kind of pop. So I feel like all those things sort of melded together. And then when it came time for me to start writing when I was about 15-ish, I started to learn to play instruments, and then I started writing with some co-writers and stuff in Toronto. And I wasn't sure myself fully exactly where I wanted to go. So there was definitely a lot of trial and error in that period. There was we went through, R&B and pop and just trying all these different things. But I think it all came back down to sort of fleshing it out with that gospel and soul influence back in the mix with that little bit of pop. So big influences were Adele and Sam Smith and Whitney Houston and Aretha Franklin. So big singers who just put a lot of passion and oomph into their music. So I think it all just kind of came full circle to what I kind of always wanted in the beginning. But yeah, there was definitely that period of just experimentation.
As you kind of discovered that sound, did you feel like it just started to naturally flow out of you every time you would write new material?
Totally, yeah. I got to a point, and even now, it's funny. I spent a couple of years just working on my my debut stuff, my first songs, and a lot of those songs, we're still rolling out now. But it's funny because even now, it's just you get into a flow where certain melodies and certain sounds and lyrics and things just naturally start to come out. I feel like the more you do it, the more experience you go through, you just get used to doing it. So now, for sure, definitely, I have I found kind of, I think, that core artistry thing that I want for my music, and it comes out very naturally.
Talk to me about Better Off and the creative process of this song. Obviously it's heavy in the piano when you listen to it, but did it really start off on the piano, or did it start with a guitar? How did that kind of happen for you?
Yeah, so I wrote that song, I think it was, it was 2.5 years ago now. I think it was a while ago, but it was actually on guitar. Yeah, acoustic guitar that we started that. I wrote it in Hamilton, Ontario with two really great writers, James and Liz. And I remember just going into James's house, and we sat down, and we'd written a little bit before, but that day we were just kind of talking about what do we want to write about. And I hadn't written a song yet. I think about just how I really truly felt in my core at that time about, not feeling like I fully fit in, where I lived and growing up, and especially being a musician from a small town, it was very difficult. Nobody else was really doing what I was doing at the time. It was difficult to relate. So I always felt like I had to try to fit this mold and be somebody I wasn't. And I remember telling them that. And Liz was talking about, I think, one of her family members who was going through kind of the same thing. And so we kind of decided to create this story of just being better off, loving yourself and taking time to truly tap into who you are and being unapologetic about it. And I remember that song just it really just flowed. And even the 6/8 feel of it and just the soulful vibe that we got, it just kind of came out in the chords on the guitar, and we sat around and wrote the song in, I think, an hour and a bit. It was super easy, and it's probably one of the most natural songs that came to me, and the one that means the most to me. But yeah, that was the process behind it.
Talk to me about that signature, that 6/8 that you mentioned. Is that something that kind of naturally just happened as you were writing the song, and you're like, okay, this is how it's going to be? Or did you kind of have that idea of I want to write a song in 6/8?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. Around that time, I mean, 6/8 songs have always come very naturally to me. It's sort of it has that old school, just that rolling kind of feel, soulful feel to it. And a lot of soul songs are written in that time signature. And I remember around that time thinking I don't really have a lot of songs in this signature. And I think I can't remember if that day we were like intentionally going for that, but I think James literally just pulled out the guitar and started playing that, and I was like, okay, yes, this is the feel. Like right away, it just felt like home, and it embodied what I wanted to create. So I think it was like a combination of both at the time.
One thing that I find interesting is like, especially more so for new artists, is that like, you have these different time signatures that, like you mentioned, they're so commonly used, but how are you able to use these time signatures, but still have a different sound? It doesn't sound like someone else's song, like how does that work for you?
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. And that's something that I've thought about a lot too and tried to analyze. Because so many songs use the same chord progressions, the same time signatures, the same production elements, but you hear like I think it all just comes down to like trying to draw from personal experience and using like the tonality in your voice, I guess, to just be a little more like different. And that's the thing is I've always, when I create songs, I want my voice to be like just very me and very like unique and individual to myself. So I think that has a part to do with it, but I think it also has to do a lot with the production. I have this amazing producer, John Levine, who produces most of my music, and he has just such a great ear for like finding these very unique, cool ways of doing things, but still making it fit. And it's I think it's just a combination of a lot of different factors, and it has to do with like the collaboration of a bunch of different people. And I think like each person has like a very unique perspective. So I think you're always going to get something different no matter who you're working with. And yeah, I think it's just a lot of different factors.
So what is it about John Levine that you've been working with him constantly recently? Is it a specific, like his way of working or his way of kind of challenging you in the studio? Like what is it about him that
totally both.
Back?
Yeah, both. The first time I actually met him and worked with him was on Better Off, when I recorded it last year. And I remember going into the studio and immediately like just being like drawn to his energy and just the way he works. Like it clicked really well. And he immediately was challenging me vocally. He was, trying to find different textures and different ways of singing that I'd really never sung before. And he can hear things that I hadn't really taken the time to hear before. And just his perspective on music is just he has just such an intuition with music and just does so well with it. So I feel like it was a combination of both. Like I connected with him really well, and then he challenged me. And then I just continued. I went to his place in LA to record a bunch of different stuff, and yeah, I still work with him to this day. So he's been amazing person to have musically and on this journey.
As far as challenges go, your lyric video is insane. How did you, I feel like that was a challenge to kind of sync it the way that you did. But, not only was it like an amazing, end result, but you kind of did this on your own in a sense. Can you talk to me about this lyric video process and, the idea behind this shoot?
Yeah, totally. So I knew obviously this whole quarantine thing had started, and Better Off was coming out, and we needed a video for it. And I was like, we couldn't do anything, as we typically would do. We usually have like a crew come and record it all, but it was like the first video that was kind of all in my hands at home to do. And my sister, who I'm like complete best friends with, and she's also super creative and into like the photography, videography side of things. We wanted to come up with like this creative idea for it. So we sat down and we were coming up with all these different ideas. Like I live in a very small town, so there's so many areas around where I live where we could have gone and done like, walking down a road or walking down a beach or whatever. But I think it all just boiled down to I wanted the song to really, the video especially, to embody like where we grew up. Like I wanted it to be in our hometown, because so much of that song's inspiration came from this town. So we were like, hey, how do we do this? We didn't have the proper equipment. And we finally figured out to put like a tripod in the back of our car as my mom drove it, and my sister just kind of manned the camera. And like, we had to do it so many times. Like I'm telling you, it was just like by the end, we were all just so stressed and grousy with each other, but like it came together. We had to wake up at like 4 a.m. to get out when no cars were coming down the street, and there were still cars that passed, but eventually we got one shot where there was no distractions, no interruptions, and it all worked out. But that song and video really means probably the most to me of anything I've created. And then, I had my amazing director that, works with me on a bunch of videos. He edited the lyrics in and did such an amazing job with that, Aaron. So yeah, the whole thing was I'm pretty proud of that, just because of how much it was. And it really makes you respect too, I think, just that whole creative side of things. Because when you're not working as like a producer or a videographer, you can get caught up with just the performance, but it just makes you realize how much work goes into that side of things.
Now, it was interesting that it was a lyric video, because I would have been like, if you said that was your music video, I would have been like happy with it. It looked so good.
Thank you.
Do you have plans on a music video for this song as well? Is that something that you're currently working on?
For this song specifically, I don't have plans for an actual music video, but I did record a music video a few days ago for another single that's upcoming. So you can watch it for that one.
So, you know, as you're kind of prepping to release more music, like, are you trying to, I feel like it's a harder time to kind of figure out whether to release singles or kind of do a body of work. Do you have a preference that you want to kind of focus on, whether it's the singles game or a body of work?
Yeah, so we've been putting out a bunch of singles for the past like couple years now, but I am working towards like a body of work for sure. We have plans for it. So singles up to a body of work. So both.
So lastly, how did the signing with Republic Records happen for you? And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so it was kind of like a process. I think I started writing with 21 Entertainment, my management and also label, back in like 2016. I started working with them, and I just kind of was developing as an artist, writing, working, and then I signed with Universal Music Canada, I think late 2017, and then I have worked with them, and then Republic got on board. I went down to New York and did a little showcase for them, played a bunch of my songs for them, and they loved it, and they've been part of the family ever since. So yeah, they've been incredible. Everybody's been incredible. And yeah, it's just kind of been a process step by step. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, congratulations. And thank you again for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks for having me.